Good afternoon. I am Elizabeth Leonard. I am the Executive Market Research Manager at SAGE, and I am so glad to see you all here. We're going to be talking about supporting entrepreneurship across campus. We have two speakers for you. The first is Ray Pun, who is the first-year Student Success Librarian at California State University, Fresno. He'll be followed by Susan Van Alstyne, who is the Library Director at Berkeley College. They're each going to take their turns talking to you about what's going on with entrepreneurship at their institutions. I'll then lead a little bit of Q&A based on the things that I have burning questions about, and then I'll turn it over to y'all for Q&A as well. So with that, Ray?
Thank you all for coming. It's kind of nice to see a bunch of people here in this kind of a interesting dynamic, because I've never presented within an exhibit booth, but I'd like to thank SAGE for this invitation, and I will be talking about my role. Just give me 1 second. Actually, I can just start right here. So I've been covering basically what I was working on previously, which is at New York University Shanghai, part of the Portal campus with NYU. And in my role, I was embedded in Career Center and working a lot with student groups in entrepreneurship. And so today I'm just going to be exploring some of that and what I've learned that I was able to bring back to my current position in Fresno State, one of the California State University universities throughout California. And so one of the interesting questions about Career Center is, why would librarians want to work with them? Well, there's a couple of reasons, because they actually bring people into their programs or events. And so this is one example that for libraries, we actually opened up the space to have an intern fair. So a lot of the students working and coming in to gather more information about job inquiries within the school and within outside companies. Just for internships inquiry. And so the library was able to host this kind of space. So that's sort of like just one example to give you an idea, because the Career Center really gives these opportunities for students to think about what they want to do, and through the library. So as I mentioned, the CDC, we call it in Shanghai, really attracts more people. They share the same level of goal and vision that you might have, which is serving students in different capacities. In our case, it's really finding resources and identifying them appropriately for the Career Center to utilize. And I'm going to talk more about that. And one interesting thing is that there are funding. Career Centers, they have better funding than libraries, from my experience. And I wanted to say that they might be able to provide gifts, giveaways, anything to sponsor a program with the library. So you might be able to attract people in more of a collaborative sense. And they also have professionals, people who are experts in identifying skill sets, people who are able to identify entrepreneur students who want to create their own business, and they can send it to the library, and then basically identify and create a strategy for their own career using various resources. So at NYU, it was Shanghai, it was very interesting because there are about 80 to 300 students for the first year interested in business, finance, and economics. And however, that doesn't necessarily mean they want to join corporate China or America. They really want to develop a more entrepreneurial spirit. And I take a lot of this idea through Stephen Bell, I think he's like right there, about his framework on entrepreneurship and the spirit in librarianship. It's very interesting. I think it was published in Association of College and Research Libraries a few years ago. And so when you're being embedded in the Career Center like I was, there are a couple of things you can do. You can design newsletters for them. You can receive their newsletters, their listservs, so you can keep track of what their upcoming programs are, their trends. You can offer space, like I just explained earlier. The library was able to host a career internship fair for them. You can also share networks and experiences. Basically, I knew a lawyer in China at the time, and I was able to get her to speak on a career panel, and that really helped because it was a good connection. Able to attend their department meetings if you can, share ideas and perspectives, obviously. But I think most importantly, you want to discuss assessment goals and performance, and in terms of where you want to build this relationship with the Career Center or any other non-academic department in the next 3 to 5 years, and what kind of strategic vision that you both share aligning with the university. So this is one example that I worked with closely with the Career Center. We were able to design business research workshops, and some of these workshops actually had information literacy component. So that meant that students had to find specific business journals, newspapers, using Factiva, using Morningstar, S&P, in just a one-shot sense. And then it gave them an opportunity to see, oh, this is an interesting job. I didn't know that there's so much company profiles or industry trends I can find using these resources. And so we also taught them SWOT, the analysis that's provided by EBSCO database, which is very, very useful because a lot of the students, they don't get to see it in action. They get to see it in theory in their classrooms. So having these kinds of databases available in these workshops that they're attending on their own without any kind of course requirement makes it much more, there's more intrinsic value, more incentive for them out of it. And obviously they are more studious in that sense. Of course, we're using different databases to find different career paths. So there's a nonprofit database we use. I think it came from Yale. So it was an opportunity for them to see what's available within the nonprofit industry. So again, there are some other opportunities, teaching skills workshops. We did one, this poster right here on lynda.com, just really simple, open workshop, open lab, and they didn't even know how to use it. They didn't know we had it, and we had about 40 students for a couple of the sessions, and it really gave them that opportunity to develop and become self-learners, to become actual lifelong learners in that sense, and realize, wow, the library does provide a lot of support, working with the Career Center. And so another thing that I was working on was Mango Languages, promoting students to think internationally. You're in an international session, and you might just think English and Chinese will get you by. However, you might want to pick up another language since you'll be here for another 4 years, so forth. And so one of the interesting things that I wanted to remark is this hackathon that I was part of. I would just keep this comment a little bit short. Part of being an entrepreneur is doing things differently, taking risks, breaking trends. And so we at NYU Shanghai, the students were able to organize a first hackathon in China, which is kind of ironic because you wouldn't associate China and hackathon in the same sentence. But however, in this context, a lot of students work together. And in my role, I was able to facilitate, as a librarian, sharing resources. It went overnight. It's a team effort with about 100-something students and other people. I don't usually stay that late, but I stayed pretty late, and it was a good opportunity. And I wanted to say that because of that, the library is able to facilitate these kinds of entrepreneurial activities going on. And working closely with the Career Center is one way, as well as developing these kinds of opportunities. Sort of like think big picture. What are the students working on? And so one way is to introduce library resources, which I did, creating a LibGuide, just a resource page. However, actually attending the meetings, even though you might be considered faculty, a staff, or some authority, you might not necessarily know anything that's what they're discussing. However, just being there gives them support that, oh, there are actually people on campus very interested in what we're doing. And of course, you can collaborate with them program-wise and events. So the hackathon was one example. They also did a toy hackathon, which meant they had to develop assistive technology, thinking about children with disabilities. How can they create or disassemble toys and put them together? This was kind of interesting because then they had to find out articles that were involved and partnering with engineering students, not just business, and also design students. So those are really good ways to just bring people together. And again, things to think about when you're collaborating, you might want to think about as a trial and error basis. It's not necessarily a one-shot thing. Is it sustainable? What is it that makes it work and doesn't work? Can you enhance or improve what you can offer? Is it scalable? Can you expand it to 1,000 students, 10,000 students? Can you keep that momentum going? Those are questions you want to ask yourself as well as your collaborators, including the Career Center. And so about the resources and budgets. Do they shrink? Do they expand? And if they do, what about visions? What kind of ways can you allocate the funding to maximize the resources you can provide to these students? And so more importantly, the goals. Every library, at least I could say 5-year goal, right? They change. So do they align? Is it this kind of direction with student engagement? So it's something to think about. Now, I want to say that I work right here currently in Fresno State Henry Madden Library, and so it's been a nice transition because as a first-year student success librarian, I work closely with first-year students in instruction, programming, and whatever they want. So, for example, I'm bringing in therapy dogs in the spring, crossing my fingers. Couldn't do cats, but I think dogs are much easier to work with at this moment. And so what we're doing now is there's an app program. It's called Discover E. It's a service for students and faculty to learn how to use different apps. So what we can do is, like, I can teach a workshop on using different apps. However, what we're planning on, and especially with one of my colleagues, a friend, the chief information officer at Fresno State, we're thinking about expanding into creating apps. How can students create apps that can sustain their own research and improve their learning abilities in Fresno State? And so this is kind of exciting because we can figure out ways that are innovative and sort of bringing the trend. And there are some other things that happened previously in my position in Shanghai where I was involved, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm able to sort of leverage and bring back. So just sort of final thoughts. It's kind of confusing with what entrepreneur is, and I think it's often the trends will change. Like maybe the next 5 years it'll be different. It might not necessarily be apps. It could be something else completely different. Maybe gathering Periscope data or Snapchat data. I don't know. It's just finding out ways to be more interesting. So as I'm figuring it out, just like the rest of you, I think this is an opportunity to discuss that we're gonna be doing things just because, heck, why not, right? So thank you again. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I look forward to your questions and comments. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm Susan Van Alstyne. I'm the director of the Newark Campus Library at Berkeley College. Our library is, we're a small campus library in an urban environment. So, and I've been the library director there for about 7 years. So one day I asked our students to describe the library in one word, and technically 2 words, but it brought my attention: my office. And as you see here, this is a quick shot of the library. We have students playing chess, students working in groups, students working individually, like any library. So according to a student satisfaction survey, we saw that 98% of students believe this statement. Overall, the library has or will contribute to my success, and over 50% of the students using the library work together in groups. So again, how the physical and virtual worlds just combine with the library. You may ask, why is the library supporting the entrepreneurship group? The entrepreneurship group is a fairly new group. They've been meeting in the library for about 2 years, and they meet weekly, and we invite speakers, faculty speakers. I've done presentations for them as well, and I provide the technology, supplies, and also arranging trips to the local business communities. And why is it so important to support this group and to support entrepreneurship? In our institution, we always try to align our goals with, we need to align our goals with the institutional goals. And that's maybe something that you always hear, you know, the library, you need to show your value. So a few months ago, Berkeley College sponsored a Women's Entrepreneurship Week. And we invited some speakers, and we worked with the Entrepreneurship Group, or the Entrepreneurship Club, to put this together. And this, the response to this was overwhelming. Many of the attendees, the one takeaway that I had from them is they said that this was so inspirational, okay? So many of the students felt it was so important to hear from business leaders their successes and their failures. So that was one takeaway that I had, that we need to invite more speakers. Students really need exposure to this. And then just working with the local community. I arranged a visit to the Essex County. I don't know, this is in Newark, New Jersey. Essex County has a small business development and affirmative action resource center library. Many of the students, they live in the city and had no idea that this existed. Okay, so while we were there, I had them sign up for alerts, for training sessions, and many students were interested in learning about the RFP process because many of them had ideas to work with the county. So I have one student who wants to open up transportation services, a cafe, some childcare services as well. So I communicate regularly with the group, and there's also a LibGuide that I put together and update regularly for them. So my experience with helping this group is to really learn what they need, not only what the library can provide to them. You know, every time they meet with us or every time I give a presentation to them, it's really learning about what they need and not just marketing all the library resources in one time, saying, I have this, I have that. You know, they really will tell me what they need and what they appreciate. So, you know, they had very simple requests like business cards, helping them with certain communications, putting together websites, that type of thing. So to tie this into why do we support entrepreneurship, I'm just going to go through this quickly. It's for resume building experiences, job creation, and the one thing I've learned is that students value the research. I did a demonstration for them on how to do some statistical data and analyze it and how to use it for their purposes. And they came to me and said, this is amazing. I can't believe this was available to us. So just something simple like that, and to really show them that the library and the information we offer is valuable to them and it will help them with their business plans. So, and you know, again, with all these library buzz statements that we've had recently about this is supporting an entrepreneurship is really, it's not a new area, but it's an area where I think we really need to concentrate a lot of our efforts because we do have a lot of entrepreneurs out there. And it's not really just the basics of here's a business plan or we'll help you write a business plan. It's really like capturing the entrepreneurial spirit, okay? And these are some activities that we're working on. And as Ray mentioned, the previous speaker, that we're going to work with career services and we're going to continue to outreach to the local community. And what's the future for us, okay? The leadership of the group just asked me to help them develop a succession plan, like because many of the students are going to be graduating. So what are we going to do? So the president of the club, he came to me the other day and said, I need you to help me write a plan so I can leave a legacy here. So I felt that was important. And we're looking at business plan competitions and basically have more students work with our professors. So how entrepreneurship comes full circle and just supports libraries and higher education. I think it's in line with all the principles. And just a few takeaways, because we come from two different institutions, okay? So considering mine's a smaller institution, you just have to scale it to what you can do. And we are a private, proprietary institution. So state funding is not really where we can't get funding from the state to build these large-scale business incubators. But I can expose the students to that. And And then, again, we always have to consider all the different stakeholders within the community, because the Newark campus library, we have our larger institutions there. We have Rutgers and NJIT, and I usually expose the students to what's going on at the other universities in the area. Thank you.
Okay, so I said I was going to have a couple questions, and indeed I do. My first one for the two of you is, you talked a lot about the students. Are all of the students that are doing entrepreneurship in business, or are they coming from across your campus?
Is this okay? They're from across the campus. Majority of them, yes, are business students, but we do have some fashion students and also some health sciences students as well.
I was going to add, can you hear me? Okay. That it's mostly engineering as well as business, but then I've gotten, at least in some of the workshops, the humanities and social science students, and then they realize that they can develop a career using certain resources as a skill building, but also they end up thinking they might switch majors, which is probably, the business school is probably really happy about that.
Okay, so across all of those students, do you find any of them are more appreciative of the library services than others? Is there a disciplinary difference?
No, not that I feel that sometimes the business students may ask for more information, but overall, I think across all disciplines, they do appreciate it.
Yeah, same here. All, I think, disciplines appreciate it. I mean, it's just really navigating the library's resources and being there and then supporting that kind of activity that they have. It's pretty intuitive.
Intuitive once they know about it, but how much do you think that students are aware of what the library has to offer in general, and is that different when it comes to entrepreneurship more specifically?
I think that's a good question. It's intuitive, but it's also, like you were saying, implying that I think it's challenging because there are a lot of resources out there, and they didn't know or they don't know that there are certain kind of resources specifically for company profiles or industry news that they can use, as opposed to just Google or ProQuest, which can be utilized in other ways too.
Yeah, the same thing. It surprised me of how little they knew about the resources that were available to them, because I feel, we're always promoting them, but they just weren't aware until they had that specific need, and then they said, oh, this is great.
Okay, I've got a single question for each of you, and then I promise I'm going to turn it over to everyone else. So, first for you, Susan. You spoke a little bit about faculty advisors. Can you talk a little bit about why is that important?
Okay, well, faculty advisors, because they have the experience from the field. I have several faculty who have their own private companies. So I was acting as their advisor for a few years, and I just felt I would serve the group better by inviting more faculty and contacting the chair and having a set advisor. So that is very important, because number one, the faculty has some also connections or networking, and also the value of the experience. So, thank you.
And Ray, this one's about the hackathon. First, for those of you who don't know, what's a hackathon? And second, why should the library be involved?
So the hackathon, it's so open to what it is that it means to, like, there are different themes, right, within a hackathon. Basically, it's a conference. People come together and then they solve an issue, solve a problem together, whether it's programming, whether it's creating or drawing some sort of a device or designing something, and they come in all different disciplines, right? You have, like, let's say product design requires different level steps, right? You need someone who's a designer, you need someone who's a programmer, you need someone who could create a business plan, you need a communicator. So in this sense, for the hackathon, it brought a lot of students from different disciplines to work overnight and just sort of have fun and really be part of this experience at NYU Shanghai. And so the library can be part of it, by not just lending out space, but really attending those meetings and figuring out what is it that they need and really don't know that we have to provide. So if they wanted to, let's say, organize a hackathon, well, where should they find out that information? I mean, that's something they can get from the library, and sort of someone can just show them how to access certain resources, articles to find out a hackathon. Or if it's something like an environmental concern and they need more in-depth research issues about it, or as I said earlier, assistive technology. What is it what are the gaps? What are the discrepancies? How can they utilize certain scholarships or publications to fill in those gaps? And sort of reading through it. But I did want to add that there is also a bar camp, which is a little bit different. It's an unconference approach where they just sort of gather and then create certain and designing certain things like toy hackathon that I mentioned. But that's also, I think, based on a Silicon Valley approach where it's just bringing in thinkers and leaders and people who are just ambitious with value of designing something that can be meaningful to society.
All right, so now it's y'all's turn. Questions? I'll come to you.
So I don't know how long these programs have been going on, but do you have a set way that you are planning on measuring outcomes after the students graduate and following their success as entrepreneurs after they leave? So you can promote it and maybe get donors?
Well, I'll answer that first. Well, we're not in a position really to get donors because of our, with our setup of the institution. However, we do right now on the institutional level, we have an alumni hall of fame, and there are two on that board that were involved in this club. One had a subscription sock business, and another one was was into cosmetics. So and had their own business. So we are developing we're developing more programs like that.
Well, for me, the students, they haven't even graduated yet. This is like their third year right now. And for me, I've transitioned to a different position. And the ones I described, those ideas about designing apps and figuring out how can they embrace the entrepreneurial spirit while being very sophisticated learners, I think it's going to be interesting because I haven't figured it out assessment process yet because I just started 6 months ago. But I think what we can do working with the Career Center is really having them, because they do a lot of that outreach after they graduate, partnering with them and to figure it out from there.
Other questions?
The theme of the hackathon in 2014, 2015 was a, sort of like assistive technology. 2014, I think they were just testing it out. I don't think they had any like themes, but it was kind of interesting because it's like overnight and then people are just very sluggish, the next day when they had to go to school and stuff, but it was a good experience.
Do you have any untapped stakeholders? People who you've got on your hit list of those people that you want to hit next?
Of course. And that would be more the local community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the local community, they can be inspirational to the students. If those students, particularly in Fresno, where I am right now, they want to stay in Fresno and build up the community, they can get tapping into internal networks.
Do any of your departments?
Thanks.
Do any of your departments have advisory groups? I know in engineering that's pretty common. I don't know whether what your specialties are, but having an advisory group from the industry might be another way that any of you could kind of expand your reach.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't at this time, but that's a very excellent point. Thank you.
No, I formed an internal library advisory group making up of students, faculty, and staff from the Career Center, as well as different students from different disciplines. It's just like 10 people, and it went really well, getting feedback in terms of events that's going on, figuring out the synergy, figuring out how we can collaborate with the faculty as well. And then right now in my current position, I'm creating a first-year student success advisory group. So it's like first-year council. So getting feedback from them about their experience in the school we're in right now.
Okay, this will be my last question. How involved are your faculty in working with you in the library to help the students in entrepreneurship?
All right, I will go first. Well, the current faculty advisor is a professor that I work with a lot. So he's pretty much vested into this entrepreneurship club, and he comes to the meetings, and he's very receptive to the library. He's always been a library supporter, so I think that is one way we got him to support the club. So
I think it's interesting because with the faculty, they don't necessarily want to get too involved because they're not comfortable with the technology right now, with the apps, with the tablets, with ebooks, with just databases sometimes. And I think they want to, but it's just, there's that learning curve, and I think it just takes some time for them to get used to using these tools for other purposes. Like in my experience right now, I think a lot of them are very excited, want to learn more apps, but then they don't know which tablet to go for because they're not used to it. And that's understandable because it just keeps changing. So I think once they sort of get through the technology, then we can sort of like talk about doing something more sophisticated.
And I just want to address that. Like on our faculty, we have faculty association days or faculty days. The librarians put together like these flash sessions for the faculty. Like, how do you download ebooks? How do you do this? And the response, a good thing we had all the literature in the libraries, because they all came running in the library the next week and said, "Do you have a pamphlet?" Like, I could show you online, but they're like, I need a pamphlet. I was like, fine, here you go. So just doing little things like that, they were very appreciative. So,
especially when you could give it to them in print. Okay, well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
all right. Thank you.